You're listening to Modern Male Radio with Jerod Zavistoski and Nick Hawk, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Whether you're a man seeking to get better with the opposite sex or a woman looking for some insight, I believe we can help. Through a long process of trial, error, and market analysis, we formulated this show to help males become more modern in their mode of thought. We've developed a methodology of the modern male, a series of all the areas a man can develop himself to become more attractive to women. This show will teach you how to become the new archetypal male, a male with the freedom to dress, groom, and behave, removed of social constructs, and only adherent to the truth of what women seek. Taking the best qualities and attributes a man can possess and integrating their understanding with undeniable logic, this show will teach you how to become the one true archetype. Welcome to the Modern Male Movement. I'm your host, Jerod Zavistoski, and you're listening to Modern Male Radio. This is all the stuff your mama should have told you and the shit your daddy never knew. And tonight we have a special announcement, ladies and gentlemen. Nick and I have decided to part ways in regards to the Modern Male Movement. While our friendship and relationship remains intact, Nick and I feel that at this time his schedule is just too busy for him to continue. I wish Nick the best of luck and hope him all the success in the world with his current projects. Stay tuned for more from the Modern Male Movement. And with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have Better Man Coach, Wayne Levine.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to the show, Wayne.
Right on. Right on.
Man, just tongue-tied, twisted all up. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
I'm so pleased that you made it and in one piece.
Yeah, traffic is traffic.
Right, it's LA. And at this time, you know, we have, it's like just at the tail end of the bad traffic. So it's cool. I found you. Where did I find you? I found you on a website called, was it Knowledge for Men, which is a great website. We're actually going to have some guys from that show on here. But you were featured on there, and you said some things that I thought were pretty cool. I checked out your website. I was like, all right, cool. This guy's got some neat stuff to say. Yep. So what is it you do? Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and kind of give us the rundown on who you are?
So I have a men's center in Agoura Hills, California called Better Man Coaching. And I got involved in men's work over 20 years ago. And it changed my life. And it showed me how empty my life was because I didn't have men in it. I was married, had small kids. Everything looked like it was perfect, but I wasn't feeling perfect. And so I got invited to an open house of this guy's men's group, and what I saw there changed me. And so I stood up and said, yeah, I'm in. I want some of this. Did a men's weekend, and that's really how my journey began.
So you were feeling distraught because you had an empty hole in your heart, and that hole could only be filled by men? Sorry, I had to.
Really?
It was funny. Oh, yeah. It was funny.
The problem is we men these days think that what we need are women to fill that hole. But the truth is,
you need men to fill the hole.
You need men to fill that part of your heart, that father wound, because you can just take a look at what's happening in the world. Men either with serial monogamy, porn, hookers, whatever it might be. They'll keep going to that thinking that that's going to satisfy them, but it's very much like a drug. It takes
what they need is manhole.
Well, that's funny. That's funny.
Sorry.
So,
but I'm dying right now. I'm dying.
Why are you dying?
This is just so funny because there's so many gay innuendos right now. Continue.
Well, so one of the things that I've had to deal with over 20 years in helping men to be the best men they could be is dealing with all sorts of issues, including homophobia.
Oh, no, it's not homophobia. I just think it's hilarious.
Huh, interesting.
I mean, that's what an innuendo is.
Right.
Yeah,
but
something
where's
that
it
can
coming
be
from?
taken two ways.
Yeah, but what's it mean, really?
I don't know. I think the languaging there was, it kind of set you up for that one.
Well, part of what makes this work difficult for men to come to is that there's so much working against them. Culture, our society doesn't support men to really get help. They don't support men to be real and authentic and honest. They don't support men to have close personal relationships with other guys, except unless you go to a ball game or you go to a bar or whatever. And those guys are really not talking about the stuff that's really eating at them, the stuff that's ruining their marriages, the things that are making them angry and frustrated and all that kind of stuff. So one of the problems in building the kind of work that I do, is making it socially acceptable for guys to get together and talk about their shit and get some answers and get out of the problem and into the solution. And so
See, I thought that was called boys' night. Like, isn't that when you go out with your buddies and you drink and you talk shit and you complain about all your problems and everybody makes fun of you?
Yeah, well, busting balls is an important part of male bonding. I mean, for sure. And we laugh a lot and we toughen each other's skin and we prepare each other.
Do you
for
think
a
that
battle.
toughening is something that is necessary?
Yeah, of course it is.
Okay.
And that's always been the case. I mean, you just even looking at Braveheart, right, the film, the men needed to take care of each other because you don't want to go into battle with somebody who's in his head and doesn't have his eye on the ball, right? So we don't have to battle the way we used to, right? It's not as dangerous, at least for us here.
So we need men's eyes on other men's balls.
There you go.
Sorry.
So here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Wayne.
So why don't you hit me with your next question? Go ahead.
Keep going. So I know. In all seriousness, you continue with your. Yeah. I don't want to keep offsetting you.
So we have to prepare each other for battle, and the battle these days is much different than the battle was a long time ago. But there's still a battle because it's hostile. It's like a hostile environment. Men and women are so unclear about how things are supposed to be these days. We're so swept away with whatever happens to be popular in the moment, whatever's trendy. But the truth is, being a man and being a woman is ancient stuff.
Yeah.
And just because culture's changing doesn't really change the fundamental rules and laws about men and women. And so
just confuses the crap out of people.
They're very confused. Men especially.
Yeah.
Especially. And then the women who have over the years felt like they had to behave more like men to deal in a male-dominated world. That's all swinging back now. I mean, what happened in the 70s with the women's lib movement, there were some radicals that really pushed it way over to the side. And a lot of those women are not really appreciating what's happened as a result. So we all have to get back to the center a little bit.
Yeah.
Figure out, what's really going on.
There was definitely a pendulum there because, I mean, there was a very male-dominated society, and it's been like that for decades and decades and decades, centuries and eons. And then it came up to this, and then the guys all left, and they went and fought a war. And this male-dominated, all of that allowed these women the ability to kind of like, blossom out of that. And then suddenly, when there's been such an oppression, the pendulum definitely swings too far the other way.
Right. We had World War II and then the quiet 50s, but it was brewing. It was all brewing then, and then it exploded in the 60s, and we're still dealing with sort of the fallout from all that.
I feel like I feel like the fallouts, we're kind of healing now. I think that there's definitely. I feel like a lot of men are coming to the conclusion that they don't have to be an archetype. I feel like a lot of women are. With the freedom to choose and say, hey, I could be super overcompensating, or I'm going to pull it back a little bit. I think that people are starting to find kind of that natural choice.
I think some people are doing the work and settling down and taking a look at things. And I think that's true. I mean, I think we're getting a lot more spiritual, and that's helping grounding people. Yeah. I think we need a lot more of that.
Well, there's also it's funny because social media always comes up, and there's always this back and forth, and it's like, okay, social media is the detriment of our society, but at the same time, social media actually globally connects us to where we can get a very collective opinion very, very fast, and you can kind of see how people feel. And a lot of these articles floating around Facebook and stuff, where we're getting we're getting the ability to kind of vote on social norms very, very quickly. And it's interesting to watch the tides kind of flow into this natural, my generation is constantly harped on for being very complacent, they just, we don't care. But it's funny because that may just be a result of seeing kind of the futility of building a social construct.
So let me tell you my honest reaction to all that.
What's that?
I couldn't give a shit
Okay.
about what's on social media. I don't care what's trendy. I don't care what's popular. It doesn't matter to me at all. And I don't think it matters to the men I work with. So my work is all focused in on helping men to be the best men they can be.
Awesome.
It's up to them. It's not the best man I think they should be, right?
The best man they can be.
They can be. They want to be. We're all different. You know, we want different things. We're personality types. We're very different, right? And so it's really about getting all the expectations and all the nonsense that men are fed through media and advertising and marketing and their parents and teachers and culture, the whole thing, and getting down to, wait a second, inside of you, there's a soul, and that soul has a voice. Can you listen to it? And if you listen to it, what's it going to tell you about who you want to be and how you want to behave and whether the things that you're doing are really of integrity or not, and where do you want to go from here? And the problem is that most men are isolated, so they have no one to talk to, and so they just stew, and they start getting frustrated and angry and disconnected, and they start acting out and abusing drugs and women and everything, right?
Do you think that they isolate themselves a little bit? Some of that fear overcompensation thing?
Well, they do isolate themselves, but it's because it's so difficult to find an outlet. Like, what do you do? If you're a guy and you're fucked up and you don't know which way to turn, who are you going to talk to?
Yeah, you walk up to one of your boys, you're like, hey, I got a problem. And he goes,
Exactly.
dude, like, toughen the fuck up.
Exactly.
Man up.
And so there are a lot of guys who have had friends since childhood, and even they won't talk about the stuff that really matters. I've known men who have been in a lot of Christian groups who swear by it, and then all of a sudden one day some guy gets divorced, and he had never talked about how miserable his marriage was, because even in those groups, it's really not safe to tell the truth. So it's very difficult to find a place where you can actually tell the truth, not get judged, but just get help to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that a lot of men, I think that men are very problem solving centric. So talking about their issues, they feel no value in that. Like, whereas a woman would sit down and she'd be like, oh, I feel this way, and da-da-da, and she'd get off her chest, and she'd find the love in that release. A man would be like, I'm just waiting to find a solution. The second I find a solution, I'm going to fix a problem. So why do I need to talk about it?
Right. Well, most of the work that I do is around relationships. So the biggest problems men have is how to be in a relationship with women. Now, women live in the world of emotions, and in the body, and men live in their heads, in the world of reason and rationale. At least they think they're being rational. Oftentimes they're just being idiots. But they don't have any innate abilities around emotions, and certainly there's no training from time you're a little boy to like honor your emotions, get clear with how you feel. But the truth is, we need to know how we feel. When we know how we feel, we can take appropriate action. Now, how we handle our feelings and how our conversations go, very different than women. But it has to get honest. And once the men in the circle hear the truth, now we can start helping you figure out what the solution is. But without that feedback, you're unlikely to figure out really the best solution for whatever problem you have. And I think that, I know this is very simplistic, but I've always thought that the solution to all of our world's problems is if every man was in a men's group, getting what he needed, getting clear, and then going to work and going home and behaving properly. Can you imagine what would have happened in the country if Clinton had been in a men's group, had men he trusted, had men who didn't sell him out just because he was the most powerful man in the free world, and he said to them, you know, guys, I'm thinking about, hitting this intern. And they would have said, are you fucking out of your mind? Just imagine what would have happened if he had someone to hold him accountable and he didn't go and do that stupid thing. So I think that there's so much value out of those relationships. And those relationships include father-son relationships and brother-to-brother and friends and uncles. It's like men. There used to be a time, not so long ago, when the men raised the boys.
Yeah.
Right? Before the Industrial Revolution, when the men worked close to home, the men raised the boys. So the boys naturally learned, this is what it is to be a man in our community. These are the norms. This is what is expected of you. It's time to grow up. You can't act like a little boy anymore. And they took care of each other.
And a man is entirely societarily defined, meaning a man is what's relevant to be a man at that specific time. And it's funny because there's a huge differentiation between being male, masculinity, and being a man, because a man is a social construct.
Well, yes, and so there are different definitions, right? But the men taught the boys. So the boys grew up knowing what it meant to be a man in that community. Okay, we don't have that now.
Yeah.
Right?
We derailed the, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. My father taught me, his father taught him, all the way up generationally.
Right.
But it's interesting to think that maybe that was a blessing in disguise because it's given us a clean slate.
Oh, I don't think it's so clean. It's a mess.
Do you think that it was, I mean, it's definitely a mess, but on the other side of that, do you think it'll allow people to be honest with, you know, kind of how they want to build themselves?
Well, I think what you're saying is that there were things that were wrong in terms of the way women were dealt with, you know, back then, right?
There were things that were wrong with a lot of the way everything was dealt with. Men were kind of taught to be damn near belligerent, just, you know, I'm a man, my will matters, and nothing you can say is going to get through to me because I'm a man.
Right. Well, that was ego run rampant.
Yes.
And it still exists. I mean,
oh yeah.
But it comes out in different ways now. And so one of the so I wrote this book, Hold On to Your Nuts.
Yes.
The relationship
yes,
manual for men. Okay?
I got a copy too, guys.
Right on.
Who's excited?
So this is available on my website, bettermancoaching.com, in all forms and audio and all that stuff. So
awesome. Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon, right.
Sweet.
So N.U.T.S stands for non-negotiable, unalterable terms. Non-negotiable, unalterable terms. Now, these are the things that define a man, the things that a man's committed to, and the things that, if compromised, will turn him into an angry, frustrated dude who will take it out on the people around him. So the whole point is you need to know who you are, what you're committed to, what defines you. And once you know that, now you can compromise and you can have a relationship, you can do all sorts of things. But you can't compromise these things. And this goes for women too, but I wrote this book for men, right? So the language is for men. So one of the chapters in here is about silencing the little boy. That's the first tool, to silence the little boy. So we have a bunch of guys who were never initiated into manhood. They were kids. They just got older. They continued to act like kids. They're still acting like kids, and now they're 30, 40, 50 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea is that they need to have some kind of modeling, some idea of what does it mean to be a man. And so I believe that you learn to be a man, the best man that you can be, while in the company of other men. Okay? That's where you learn it. That's a great guy. I want to be like that guy. He's an asshole. I don't want to do that. Right? So you learn. And you learn how men interact.
You start
with
collecting people's natural traits and implementing them as kind of a, yeah, I want to build this. I like that quality. I'm going to take that, and I would like to produce more of that. Or, hey, I got a perspective on that because that person just did that, and I've held that back my whole life. But that was actually really charming.
That's
just
right.
now.
And so we had fathers who, many of us, who weren't available for one reason or another. They died, they moved, divorced, they worked all the time, they were angry, they were alcoholics, whatever. And we didn't get the fathering we needed. But my feeling is that you can always get the fathering you need. You can't go back and change what happened when you were a kid, but those wounds can heal. You can get fathered by the other men, and you can father the other man. Because no matter how screwed up you are, no matter how much pain you're in, you have wisdom to give too. So there's that gold in being able to help another man and think, wow, I have this to give. And the next week, he's getting the help from another guy. Because when we're in the shit, we can't see it. But everybody else can see it perfectly clear.
I don't know if they can always see it perfectly clear, but it's funny. I actually agree with you a lot on that subject. I was kind of drifting and thinking about my upbringing, and I grew up without a father, and it was actually probably it was Muay Thai. It was kickboxing. I was on a fight team. I was with a bunch of other guys all the time, and that was kind of what set me on my path as like a man. And that's interesting to think that, you know, men really, really do need their guy time, and that separate guy time, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
just man time.
One of the biggest mistakes men make when they're in so this book is read by older guys, right? Usually. Because you don't come to this until you start to get miserable. So 30, 40, 50, right? But the content of this book with a little editing should be taught to high school kids, because it's in high school, now in junior high, that boys start selling themselves out for pussy. They start right away. So they may have really good friends, and then they get a girlfriend, and they stop hanging out with their buddies. It starts then, and I'm telling you, it doesn't stop. So you get through high school, you go to college, you get married, and you think, this is what I need to do. I need to do for my wife the same thing that my 14-year-old girlfriend wanted me to do. She wanted me to be there for her all the time, because girls are just working it out. They're just sharpening their knives, you know, for the rest of life. They're figuring it out. They're looking for a mate. Boys are stupid. They're just doing what they're told. And so these.
What do you mean by sharpening their knives? We got to go back to that.
Well, women, girls are working. Girls are built around relationships, and they, much earlier than boys, they are thinking ahead. They're looking for, innately, they're looking for that the father to their children, the provider. It's just in it, right? You can see how girls behave and how boys behave. How girls talk about their boyfriends and how boys talk about their girlfriends. It's vastly different. And so this information, if it were only taught to young kids to say, listen, have a girlfriend, have a great time, but make sure you keep playing and having fun with your guys because you don't want to let that go. So what happens is the boys learn to let those relationships go and not value their relationships with the young men in their lives. And they grow up and all of a sudden they are feeling it.
And a lot of times I think that men kind of start to develop themselves, their interactions with other men around getting girls. Boy time is then therefore we go hunt as a pack and this and that could be a mistake as well.
If the intent is to pick up women, that's fine. But if what really wants to happen is that you want to have just a good time talking about some stuff or working out some problems, the worst thing is to have a woman there. So I just wrote an article about this. You can have a circle of men, and we could be talking about the most important issues in these men's lives. And if a woman walks into the room or walks by, if you're in a park, right, forget it.
Blink.
It's gone.
Done.
It's gone. And how long it takes to get the men back, okay? Which is one of the reasons why women cannot be there when men are doing that work.
Again, I think that goes into survival of the species. I think that's implemented in men. That's why men will literally give up their whole lives for a woman. That's why love is considered irrational, because at the end of the day, if the species doesn't reproduce, it's a moot point at that point.
There is some biology at play for sure. There's a lot of biology.
And it's funny because I actually wrote this down. I was wondering, actually, what you think about the idea that as we've evolved as a society, I mean, innately, every woman wants to procreate, but,
not anymore.
Okay. So we're getting right to that. So, I mean, innately, we would think that women wanted to procreate for, eons and eons, all the way back. And she would be attracted to certain qualities dependent on the decade or dependent on the century that she was involved in. And I wonder if through generational evolution, like men, for instance, way back in 500 BC, had way more testosterone. We were way more violent. Women might have been more attracted to a man like that because she would immediately associate that he could take care of her and he could provide for her. And now, fast forward, I wonder if not only has society changed, but generationally, women have kind of evolved the need for that out, and women are more attracted to qualities that are relevant to our society. What do you think about that?
Listen, I'm not a sociologist, but a lot of that makes sense.
Okay.
Women are still attracted to some of those. Women have been complaining for many years now that they can't find real men, right?
Yeah.
So the guys went soft. They swung the one way, right?
Well, the modern women movement came out of nowhere, out of the 50s, and they're like, girl power, don't you treat us like this, da, 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 da. Then they're like, where did all the men go?
Exactly. Right.
Well, I want somebody to be more manly and masculine. And then the second he's too masculine, he misses the mark. And she's like, oh my God, no, he's aggro. No, that's crazy. And it's funny because there's such a fine line there.
Yeah. Yes. Well, there's a lot of immaturity out there too, and there's a lot of drama out there. And I try to teach men to stay away from the drama, and also be aware of how much they're contributing to it. But that exists for sure. That exists, and that's why everyone's so confused. And I think we have to just take a step back and be a bit more simplistic, because what a man needs to do to attract the woman is be the best man he can be. And then he will attract a woman who's attracted to that man. Unfortunately,
that's actually in my book.
Right on.
Almost verbatim.
So, unfortunately, so much effort these days is put into the world of seduction, and And it's not really about being authentic. It's about conquest and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Get the girl. How do you keep the girl?
right. And most of I've met a lot of guys who are in that world, and most of them are deeply, deeply wounded men.
Yeah.
Who have so many issues with their mothers. I mean, they're men who really hate women. They're angry at women because they're really angry at their mothers.
You know, that's in the book too. Actually, I talk about that community specifically. I think we're
you?
talking about the pickup artist community.
Yeah.
And there's an entire like afterword in the back of my book about that community, and you know how I feel that there's a huge differentiation between, practically applicable things that you can use to actually get a girl, and that sleazy stuff that is really developed from I got wounded once and I'm going to take it out on every fucking girl I've ever met.
That's right. That's right. And most of the money in terms of men getting trained for one thing or another, right, whatever, to become better, it seems like most of that money, at least from what I've seen on the web, is going to that stuff. And it doesn't work, and it doesn't work for most, it doesn't work. And it doesn't get you what you want. I mean, what most men want is that woman. That's what ultimately.
Yeah.
You want that one. You only need one.
The one.
Right? And you're not going to get them by pulling these tricks and, having the same respiration rate and all this kind of crap.
Well, and it's funny because, I mean, that stuff was really popular for a brief period of time. I think it came out of nowhere. People were like, what the heck was that? So it had some shock value to it. And I think over the course of time, even anything, any sort of game, people get immune to it. You build immunities to viruses.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was a virus.
Right.
We'll put it out there.
Yeah.
The whole thing, I'm going to develop myself outwardly as best I can to try and manipulate somebody into liking me. And it's like, what do you do when she likes you? Where do you go from there? So
the question that comes to mind is, do you like you?
Yeah,
right?
And I think that's huge. Yeah,
it's an inside job, right? No matter what you do on the outside, if you have low self-confidence, if you still hear your mother or your father screaming at you for being lazy, stupid, not good enough, whatever, you're never going to get the woman that you really want.
And I've often said that that community uses a lot of these tricks. Like if I handed you a Bible and I said, hey, if you read this, you're going to go to heaven or whatever, same concept. I'm going to hand you a book full of tricks. I'm going to tell you that this will work. Sure. It's a permission slip to develop confidence.
Yes.
To say, hey, I can do this incredible thing by going in and talking to a girl, just like if with a Bible, I can go conquer the world, because I have, faith in God. It's kind of that same thing. And really, yeah, it all boils down to confidence. Yes. It's all.
And I think that this is not easy work. If you're trying to change, if you're trying to be better, it's not easy.
Yes.
Because you have been inundated with messages from the time you're a little boy.
Yeah, and every time you dig up a layer, there's another layer. You're
there's
like,
a lot
are
of
you
work.
Kidding me right now?
That's right. That's right. And listen, I've been working actively, consciously for over 20 years to be a better man. And there's not a day that goes by that something else just doesn't pop up. It's like, really? Yeah. I still have that? I'm still dealing with that reaction?
Never going to be done.
No, but I'm a completely different man than I was 20 years ago. I'm a completely different man than I was 10 years ago. So the work works, whatever you're doing, right? As long as you stay committed to it, it works. But you have to be patient.
Well, the law of life. If you stop growing, you stop progressing, you die.
Yes.
I mean, that's anything in life.
Yeah, and I see a lot of men dying.
It's unfortunate. It really is. So it's funny because there are a whole bunch of different things that we can touch on. But what do you think of the word alpha male? I mean, what do you think an alpha male is?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No. I mean, the connotation that I have, is not all positive. There are men who have a particular kind of personality type, and they're strong and they're leaders, right? Mm-hmm. But not everyone is built that way, and not everyone needs to be built that way. And the problem is that a lot of men believe that if I'm going to get a woman, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to be successful, I got to be like that guy.
Well, if we were all leaders, we'd all go nowhere. We'd just sit there and fight. So the question is do we all need to be leaders? And is the problem in our association with the word leader?
Well, okay, so men all need to be leaders in their relationships. But, okay. But how you lead, it has to work with you. It has to be congruent with who you are, not with that guy, right? So if we think about the, the football quarterback jock sort of archetype, right? You don't have to be like that, because there are a lot of other players on the team, and they're not all like that. But they all have to lead. The linebackers have to be led. The backfield has to be led. Everyone has to be led, right? And it takes different kinds of leadership depending on where you are, and it takes a different kind of person to lead depending on what situation you're in, right? But I really want to emphasize, the reason most men are not happy in their relationships, whether you're married or not married, is that you're not leading. When you start leading and you feel confident and you understand what that means, you will be with a woman who wants to be with that man. But women want to be led. They want.
Do you think all women want to be led?
Yes.
In every relationship?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there are women who say they don't, but those are very angry women who are steamrolling over their men, who are allowing that because they were shown what to do by their dads, who were steamrolled by their mothers.
So what do you mean by lead in a relationship? Define that.
I know women who are very successful in business, who make thousands of decisions every week. But when they come home at night, they don't want to be asked, where do you want to go to dinner? They want their man to make reservations and take care of them. They don't want to be in charge. That's what they do at work. So what's happening, that even though women are in the workplace, which is a whole other topic of conversation that we could talk about sometime, and that makes it difficult for a lot of men, having the women in the workplace. When they come home, when these women come home, they want a man. And you could look like any flavor of man and still be a leader in that relationship.
Okay, so being a leader directly relates to food choices, or is there more to that? Like,
There's probably more to that.
We're talking about like leader in the bedroom, leader in food choices.
So one of the chapters in my book, Hold On to Your Nuts, here we go, the relationship manual for men, is running the sex and romance departments.
Okay.
Men need to run the sex and romance departments. Now, what does that mean? It means a lot of things. Women can participate. Men want women to initiate. That's all good. But men need to run it and create an environment where a woman wants to initiate. So he needs to romance her. He needs to build, romance starts first thing in the morning and when the lights are out at night. Everything's foreplay. And if a man's not doing the things that he did to woo her,
yes,
right, it goes downhill. And now he's wondering, why are we not having sex as much, and why is it not as interesting? And
I would say that it's really important when courting somebody. Never display something that you're not going to be able to sustain in a relationship. I think that a lot of people put their best foot forward and they get in a relationship, they get comfortable. It's not sustainable. It's not the part of them. They're not really like that. They're literally projecting what they want, and the second they get it, that leaves, and the relationship goes.
Well, men and women both do that.
I agree. Well, I mean, you have that freedom to do that. So I can see where, the second that makeup came out, every woman on earth uses makeup. Why? Because it's an advantage. I'm gonna make myself look a little prettier than maybe I feel. I don't know.
Well, in these days now with online dating, you would believe that people were on their best behaviors on first dates, but it's so messed up out there. The things that men and women are doing when they're on their best behaviors are so atrocious that it's no wonder that more than half of the adults are single right now.
I think that they're on their best behavior online, but the second they meet each other, it's like the complete opposite, like the pendulum swings, and they're like, because they have so many options. They know exactly what their options are, so they're not treating this relationship as, hey, I'm present with you, I'm going to put my best foot.
Swipe left, swipe right.
Exactly.
Swipe left, swipe right. And I'll go on the next one. But, so this brings up a point we were talking before we started here about people are unconscious. And, I focus in on men. Men are unconscious. They're not connected to themselves. They're not connected to a higher power. They're not connected to each other. They're just floating. And they don't know what to hang on to. And they don't have a place where they can quiet themselves and find out what's true. Just what's true for them. What do they want? What do they want to do? Who do they want to be with? And because they're not conscious, they're not even aware of the things that they're doing that are sabotaging any chance that they have to find, happiness or purpose or whatever the case may be. So a lot of the work that happens with, the coaching that I do with individuals and couples and the groups that I do, is getting men conscious about who they are asking them questions they've never been asked before. For instance, I get a lot of guys in who have been in therapy at one point or another, and I'll sit with them for the first hour and a half, and I'll ask them some questions that are just, to me, let's get started. And I can't tell you how many times these men have never talked about these topics in years of therapy, right? How is it possible that you were in therapy for 3 years and you never discussed your relationship with your father? And I'm talking to you about that in the first half hour. How is it possible? So even guys who are trying to get help and trying to get conscious are working with people who have no idea what they're doing. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of people in the psychological community have not done their own work, have not been trained very well, and so they really are not in a position to help people who are coming to them, especially men. And unfortunately, what happens is that when men finally maybe take the risk and say, you know what, I should go to a therapist, and then they have some ridiculous experience, they're gone.
Yeah.
And they'll never go back again. And it's really tragic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I totally agree. There's so much convolution in that industry. And there's so many people that went into it because it was fascinating to them.
Or they went into it because they had work to do, right? They wanted to fix themselves.
Perhaps.
Which is fine. The wounded leaders, the wounded healers can be the best healers.
Yeah, I think they are.
But only if you do the work.
I think, I mean, I can't state this as a meme, but I would say that people that have been in your shoes are usually the best at telling you how to do what it is you're trying to do. And especially if you're going to do a bunch of work and help yourself, somebody who's completely normal, who's actually just curious about the human mind, as opposed to somebody who's actually been there and been like, hey, look, let me turn around and go, okay, I know exactly how you feel right now, and take it from me. I'm going to show you how to get out of this fucking hole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As opposed to just like a lot of therapists do, they just look at the book under a chapter of, anxiety, and, they'll tell you what to do.
I got the cliff notes right here.
That's right.
So this is fascinating. So what do you, I mean, in business, one of the things that I've been having this, it's been a subject for me that keeps coming up. It keeps presenting itself. And that subject would be the unyielding man versus the understanding man. Mm-hmm. And I see archetypes. I see people that are, they're very unyielding, and then that strong leadership, no means no, and da-da-da. And I mean, as a man, I look at that sometimes and I go, that's fucking awesome. I wish I was more like that. And then I talk to women, and women are like, that is so not what you want to be, da-da-da.
Right.
And like, I've always had a very understanding kind of relationship with the world. If you tell me something, my first reaction is, how can I understand you better? What are you really trying to say? And I think it goes back to being unconscious. A lot of men are just simply reactive. Yes. Immediately, they go to those kind of boilerplate feelings of, resentment, anger, jealousy. A lot of those things are on your website. Mm-hmm. So what do you...
First of all, the skill set that makes you successful in the workplace is a completely different skill set than will make you successful in relationships. So, in work, you have to be certain ways, certain places, certain times.
So you agree in formulating a duplicitous skill set as opposed to being one true self all the time?
Well, certain behaviors would not be acceptable in the workplace. Especially these days, in this litigious society we live in, we have to be very careful in the workplace. It's a hostile environment, especially for men in the workplace.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of men were legitimately sexually harassing women. I don't feel like women need to be subjected to that.
That's true, but there are also many, many women who were taking advantage of that.
I think that more men were taking advantage of it on the other side than women were going, oh my God, sexual harassment. It's like, look, if treat her like a human being or fuck off. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Well, having worked with men, a lot of men over the last 20 years, I have a lot of stories about women who use their sexuality and against men who couldn't handle it. Now,
so they baited them.
Yes. It doesn't excuse unacceptable behavior on the men's part. That's for sure. That's always happened. That you watch Mad Men. That was part of the culture, right? Mm-hmm. It's part of what made it so difficult for men when women came into the workplace. All the rules changed, and they couldn't adapt. A lot of men couldn't adapt to it.
So it's funny because you talk about the workplace, and it was a male-dominated environment, and then we're also going back to men in groups. And do you think that a lot of men back then actually got that outlet because workplace was their man time, the man time that you're talking about,
of course,
in the beginning?
Well, they didn't get all of what I do in a men's group, right? They weren't necessarily talking about the things that really mattered, unless they had a few drinks and then the truth came out, whatever. But they did have a place where men could be men, however it was defined at the time, right? Also back then, all the service organizations were male only, right? So Kiwanis and Rotary, so guys had a place to go to be of service with men. That all changed with Title IX in the 70s, and all the service organizations, all the private men's clubs were thrown out. You couldn't have private men's clubs anymore because women wanted to have access, and there was validity to everything that was going on. But one of the consequences is that the places where men had to go, where they could go to be together, they no longer existed. I talked once at a Kiwanis or Rotary or something in Santa Monica, and when it was done, a guy came up to me, an old timer. He says, "You know what? The stuff that you're talking about, your groups," he said, "we used to have that here before the women came in.
But now no more because the women came and they took it over, motherfucker."
Well, they couldn't. They said, he said, things would come up, and then after the meeting, the guys would go off and they'd help a man that was in need. But it doesn't come up anymore because the men won't even bring up the topics in a mixed setting.
That's funny. You know, I can definitely see the relevance of the necessity of having two very separate things, duplicity within, using what's appropriate at the time for the situation at hand. And that's funny because a lot of people would think that that was a duplicitous part of your personality or being fake or whatever. But as a man, you gotta, you know, we all use tools, right? So you got a tool set, and you don't take a wrench to screw in a screw.
Exactly right. So it's not about being somebody else. It's about calling on that part of you that's necessary at the time. You would not treat a 4-year-old girl, your daughter, the same way that you would treat a 30-year-old colleague. Mm-hmm. Right? It just wouldn't happen that way. You have to be able to adapt with your situation. That's all we're talking about. But if you're not clear about who you are, then you're not just adapting and calling on tools. You don't know who you are. And that's when you behave inappropriately because you're not grounded. You're trying to act like somebody who's supposed to be doing this job, and then you cross the line because you're not really conscious about what you're doing. So the work that you do to be a better man translates, you know, whatever you do to improve yourself as a husband or a dad translates to work because now you're more grounded. You are in touch with who you are. You see where your problems are, and then you see how they show up in your relationships with the people at work. And so those can be improved too. You know, so if you have issues with your mother or your father, and they're coming out with your wife, they're also coming out with the women and men at work. They feel it. Whether you act as much of an asshole as you might at home or not, the energy's there. It's impacting how you're relating to everybody in the office. So once you do a work in any part of your life, it starts improving how you are in all parts of your life.
And I've always been a big, huge advocate of martial arts, you know, fitness, whatever it takes, you know, a sports team or, you know, whatever you want to do on the side, because I think that a lot of men are frustrated. A lot of men are angry, getting that out. I think a lot of men still have a latent animal within them, a very strong, you know, anger or whatever. And I think that's one of the quickest outlet releases that they can use, and then also bond with other men.
I'll tell you, I think you're absolutely right. Every man has rage in them. And so we have an annual retreat, and we do some other trainings where we do some very intense work and fun work and stupid work. We do a lot of things that men do, all designed to just get you comfortable being with other men and opening up and getting
like go up to the top of a mountain and scream,
all that
pull your
stuff.
shirt off.
Including that. But one of the things we do is we really hit anger and grief. And men have anger and grief in them. And we provide a place where that can come out. And it's extraordinary. And women could never be present to that because it would terrify them.
Grief from
pain in their lives,
Okay.
issues with their dads, things that they were never allowed to really express, all the things that were pushed down into the shadow because it wasn't acceptable to be that way, act that way, talk that way, emote that way at home, at school, in your culture. And all this stuff gets pushed down, and then we have to try to make a living and satisfy a wife and try to hold on to some dreams. And all of a sudden you get to be a certain age where you are a pressure cooker. Now, a lot of men will deny that they have that in them, but I have never met a man who did not have grief and anger in them.
Do you think it's possible to actually share that in your relationship with your spouse?
The purpose of having a place to be with men is to get clear about what those issues are, to express all the ugliness, I mean the real ugliness that comes out when you're angry, in a place where no one can get hurt. Once you let all that anger out, right, now you can talk through what is behind it, and then you can get clear about, well, what do I need to do at home? So you should not work out your anger with your wife. You should work your anger out with the men, and then go home and be able to be a mature male, to be able to talk to your wife and tell her how you feel, and to be able to listen to her without judgment. So we need a place to get all that shit out of us, and that's what these circles of men are all about.
These circles of men. There you go again. Cool, man. So awesome. We're about to wrap up here, but it's funny because we keep coming back to this all night, and you obviously do men's circles. You do these coaching retreat things. Where can people find you? Give us a run through.
So I help men to be the best men, fathers, husbands, brothers, owners of businesses they can be, leaders. And I do that through individual, couples, and group coaching out in Agora Hills. And I also do a lot of work on the phone. I have clients all over the world. So I wrote this book, Hold On to N.U.T.S, The Relationship Manual for Men. It's available on the site in print, in all electronic version, and audio version. And we do other trainings, and so you go to the website bettermencoaching.com, and there are a lot of videos and articles that I've written that will give men and women an idea of what's possible. And I know you have a lot of women who are listening. Women are usually really the ones who are driving the men to me. They've had it, they're frustrated, they're unhappy, they lower the boom, you've got to do something or I'm out, that sort of thing. So unfortunately, most men come to me when they've really done a lot of damage. Because they don't realize that it's best to come to someone like me.
Preventatively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just like eating well and exercising and not getting ill is better than having to go to the doctor.
Or getting cosmetic surgery before you get old. I'm kidding. But there's something to that. Preventative care. Like if you always take care of your car, you're not going to have to worry about, something big coming up.
Exactly.
So, cool. So we got the website. We got everything. We got your books. And cool. And as always, you can find us at methodologyofthemodernmale.com. That's methodologyofthemodernmale.com. We'll have tonight's show up. We will have links to Wayne's website. And you can find us on Facebook at the Modern Male Movement, or Methodology of the Modern Male, via Facebook. And as always, I'm your host, Jerod Zavistoski. And that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks for tuning in to Modern Male Radio.
You're listening to Modern Male Radio with Jerod Zavistoski and Nick Hawk, right here on LA Talk Radio.